It's noon on the West Coast, 3 o'clock in D.C., where the White House is hitting back against the Robert Mueller investigation. President Trump says the man who's cooperating with investigators is a proven liar. But where will George Papadopoulos lead investigators? Our Judge Napolitano has some thoughts on that, and he'll join us live. Plus, the Russians now weighing in on this case. Turns out they do not think it's a big deal. Of course, they've been meddling in America's affairs for quite some time, and today we're going to learn just how far they've spread in our social networks. Representatives from Facebook, Twitter, and Google are testifying on Capitol Hill right now. Also, the new iPhone 10, haven't seen it, right? iPhone 10, anyone? The first reviews are out. Think it's worth $1,000+? Let's get to it.
Breaking news. Shepard Smith reporting live from the Fox News deck.
And first from the Fox News deck on a Tuesday Halloween afternoon, the White House has just wrapped up its briefing, as you no doubt just saw. Press Secretary Sarah Sanders saying that the president's former campaign advisor lied and, quote, that's on him. Earlier today, President Trump dismissed him as a low-level volunteer. This comes after we learned that George Papadopoulos pleaded guilty to lying to FBI agents about his contacts with Russians and conversations during which a man offered dirt on Hillary Clinton. The president also tweeting about his former campaign manager, Paul Manafort. He, of course, surrendered to the FBI yesterday and pleaded not guilty to charges that include, but are not limited to, conspiracy against the United States of America. He's accused of funneling payments through foreign companies and bank accounts as part of his political work in Ukraine on behalf of a Russian politician, or one who was favored by the Russians. Another former advisor, Rick Gates, this man also pleaded guilty in the same case. Both of them are now under house arrest. Paul Manafort's lawyer has called the accusations ridiculous. He said there is no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. The president is downplaying the special counsel Mueller's investigation into Russia meddling and said the charges against his former campaign aides are tweeting, the fake news is working overtime. As Paul Manafort's lawyer said, there was no collusion, and events mentioned took place long before he came to the campaign. Few people knew the young, low-level volunteer named George Papadopoulos, who has already been proven to be a liar. Check the Dems. Fact check. The charges against Paul Manafort actually stretch from 2006 to 2017 to this year. As for George Papadopoulos, he was brought onto the Trump campaign as a foreign policy advisor in early March of 2016 and was told at the time, according to the indictment, that the campaign sought better relations with Russia, again, early March of last year. He then took a meeting almost immediately in Italy with a man who professed to have good relations or good connections with the Russians. On March the 21st of last year, the president identified himself as one of his advisors on his foreign policy team during an interview with the editorial board of the Washington Post newspaper. Here's the audio from that.
Waleed Ferris, who you probably know, PhD, advisor to the House of Representatives caucus, and is a counterterrorism expert. Carter Page, PhD. George Papadopoulos, he's an oil and energy consultant, excellent guy.
Energy consultant, excellent guy. That was March the 21st of 2016. Remember, Gates and Mueller pleaded not guilty. If I misspoke, for that I apologize, not guilty. So this is March the 16th of last year. March the 21st of last year. 10 days later, as we reported yesterday, the president sent by Instagram this photo of the group he called his national security meeting. We've circled George Papadopoulos there. According to the indictment, after that photo opportunity, Papadopoulos had multiple meetings with Russians in person, by Skype, and by email, while in contact with campaign officials. Papadopoulos offered to set up a meeting between Trump and Putin. It didn't happen. In August of last year, a campaign official encouraged Papadopoulos to make a trip to Russia to meet with officials if feasible. He never did. Again, according to the indictment, on January 27th of this year, the FBI interviewed him. During that interview, he lied about the timing of his meetings with the Russians. He told the FBI he was not on the campaign team when those meetings happened. That was also a lie, to which he now admits. On July the 27th, the FBI arrested him. Then 38 days later, he pleaded guilty. During all or part of those 38 days, he was, as it was described in the indictment, a proactive cooperator in the FBI investigation. And he is still cooperating. We have Team Fox coverage. Kevin Corke at the White House. First, the Chief Washington correspondent, James Rosen, live in Washington. James?
Shep, good afternoon. One key assertion of the special counsel's office and its new star witness, the former Trump campaign foreign policy advisor George Papadopoulos, is coming under challenge today. You will recall from our coverage yesterday that it was Papadopoulos' meetings with a foreign professor who claimed access to well-connected Russians that led Papadopoulos to try to arrange a meeting in Russia for then-candidate Donald Trump, an initiative the campaign rebuffed. Documents released along with Papadopoulos' guilty plea said, and I quote, "The professor told defendant Papadopoulos, as defendant Papadopoulos later described to the FBI, that, quote, they, meaning the Russians, have dirt on her, meaning Hillary Clinton. The Russians had emails of Clinton. They have thousands of emails." Today, the Telegraph newspaper in London has identified the professor as Joseph Mifsud, a teaching fellow at Stirling University in Scotland since May, whose online resume appears only sketchily defined and whose limited history of publication includes articles supportive of Putin regime positions. This photograph was taken at an annual conference sponsored by the Valdai Discussion Group, a pro-Russian think tank with which Vladimir Putin meets annually. Mifsud acknowledged meeting with Papadopoulos, but, quote, Professor Mifsud told the Telegraph he was upset by the claims about being privy to dirt on Hillary Clinton because they were incredible. He also described as a laughingstock a suggestion in the report that he had introduced Papadopoulos to a female Russian national described as a relative of President Vladimir Putin. Here is Professor Mifsud speaking before that pro-Putin group in May 2016, around the time that he was in touch with George Papadopoulos, extolling Moscow's role in finalizing the Iran nuclear deal.
You had to have all the players there, including the United States, and almost people were dragged into agreeing it, and I think the tact of Foreign Minister Lavrov and his team is exceptional in this sense.
The unsealed documents indicate that George Papadopoulos is now cooperating with the special counsel's office, having been arrested at Dulles Airport this summer and having entered his guilty plea on October 5. Typically, sentencing is deferred and ultimately conditioned on the degree of assistance the state's witness will provide to the special counsel's investigation. Shep.
James, thanks. The White House, again, downplaying George Papadopoulos' role in the campaign, as well as the indictments against Paul Manafort and Rick Gates. Both of them have pleaded not guilty. Team Fox coverage continues. White House correspondent Kevin Corke in the briefing room. Kevin?
Listen, Shepard, this White House knows it has tax reform on its mind. They also have a Fed chair that they'd like to announce tomorrow and a big Asia trip coming up. But clearly, the conversation continues to circle back not only to the guilty plea by George Papadopoulos, but also the indictments and the House arrest of a couple of Trump staffers during the campaign. We're talking about Messrs. Gates and Manafort. Now, today, the White House press secretary, Sarah Sanders, once again tried to distance the White House from Papadopoulos, who, as you know, has been cooperating with federal investigators since his arrest in this summer, I'd say about July.
Papadopoulos is an example of actually somebody doing the wrong thing while the president's campaign did the right thing. All of his emails were voluntarily provided to the special counsel by the campaign, and that is what led to the process and the place that we're in right now, was the campaign fully cooperating and helping with that. What Papadopoulos did was lie, and that's on him, not on the campaign, and we can't speak for that.
So you can see where they're going with this thing, Shepard. Their idea is, no matter what has come out thus far from the special counsel's investigation, nothing, at least directly, they would argue, has tied the president or the campaign specifically to collusion with the Russians. Shepard.
Kevin, the president also talked about the Republican tax plan today.
Yeah, this is one of those things where you keep trying to turn the conversation back towards something that has major policy implications, to say nothing of the fact that we know how tough the battle was on Capitol Hill over health care. They're going to try it again, this time with tax reform. Sarah Sanders again talking about the need to focus on what the president really would like to get done, and that's get tax reform to happen quickly. The president with the spray earlier today talking about taxes as well. Here's what he had to say about it.
I want the House to pass a bill by Thanksgiving. I want all of the people standing by my side when we get ready to sign by Christmas. Hopefully before Christmas, you'll all be in the room standing front row center. I think we'll be able to find a place where you can all stand front row center. It'll be a big event. It'll be the biggest tax event in the history of our country.
Try again, meaning you can try to turn the conversation to taxes, but that doesn't mean, Shepard, at any point, especially given the nature of this investigation with the special counsel, that won't be the lead conversation, especially in rooms like this one, Shepard.
Kevin Corke at the White House, thank you. Ahead, more on the Mueller investigation and the Papadopoulos connection. What exactly happened in the months between the foreign campaign, well, I should say, the advisor's arrest and his guilty plea. It was 38 days. Judge Andrew Napolitano will join us with more on what the indictment indicates and what could be coming. That's straight ahead from the Fox News deck on a Halloween afternoon. Good to have you, man. Guilty plea could be the tip of a dangerous iceberg for President Trump. That's the word from our chief legal analyst, Judge Andrew Napolitano. George Papadopoulos, the campaign official, the foreign policy advisor, admitted that he lied to the FBI about his contacts with Russia and a professor offering dirt on Hillary Clinton. He lied about the timing of that. He lied when he said he was not a member of the campaign during any of that. And the plea deal happened 38 days after they arrested him. It was 38 days. The original charges, those original charges against him, included obstruction of justice. But now he is charged only with lying. Why did that happen? We'll get to that. Analysts say Robert Mueller's decision to reveal all of this now, he certainly did not have to, sends a message that Papadopoulos could be giving the special counsel some key information. Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano is here. You think he wore a wire?
I think he wore a wire.
You're not alone.
No, right, and I don't know when he wore the wire. He either wore it between the time of his arrest and the time of his guilty plea, or the time of his guilty plea and the revelation of the existence of the guilty plea yesterday. This is a very unusual guilty plea, Shep.
How so?
It occurred in secret. The doors to the courtroom were locked, and the documents referencing the existence of the guilty plea were kept under seal by order of the judge. Now, in order for a judge to do this, prosecutors and defense counsel must both request the secrecy, and the government must persuade the judge that the failure to maintain secrecy will materially interfere with an ongoing criminal investigation. Translate, he's become one of our witnesses. He's probably wearing a wire. We're going to send him to talk to some people. If they know he's pleaded guilty because you make this public, Your Honor, then you'll defeat our criminal investigation. The judge says, okay. Second, the original charge, as you just said, against him was obstruction of justice. 20 years.
Up to 20 years in prison.
Right. Lying to the FBI, 5.
In addition.
If he tells but he was never charged with the obstruction
I know,
of justice.
but had he been?
Correct. That tells me he has already provided significant assistance to the government already for them to reduce the 20 down to 5. He now wants that 5 years to go down to 6 months.
And it could.
And it could.
And he could also get probation.
Correct, depending upon what else he provides them.
Now, here's the thing. He, along the way, first of all, there were contacts with Russians repeatedly.
Right.
The campaign knew of these, according to the documents that are inside the indictment. The campaign encouraged him on August the 15th of 2016, according to the indictment. The campaign encouraged Papadopoulos to make a trip to Russia if feasible. January 24th, the FBI is investigating interference here and speaks to Michael Flynn. They interview Michael Flynn. 2 days later, January 26th, Sally Yates goes to the White House. She was the acting attorney general at the time.
Correct.
And she said that Flynn has lied and that Flynn is subject to blackmail or vulnerable to blackmail by the Russians.
Right.
The next day, January 27th, Papadopoulos, who's already gone to Italy to meet about Russians, who's gone to many different places to meet about Russians, including London, Papadopoulos is coming back into Dulles Airport in Virginia, near Washington. And when he lands, they arrest him. Nobody saw this, told of this, not really sure. But no, they interviewed him. And on that day,
it was a voluntary interview. They told him, you don't have to meet with us. Anything you say can be used against you. You can call your lawyer right now. He says, I have nothing to worry about. I'll talk to you.
None of my Russia contacts, none of that happened during the campaign.
Right.
I wasn't even a campaign official yet. He lied about that.
They knew at the time he lied to them that he was lying because they had verified where he had been and when he had joined the campaign before the interview.
Now think about that. That was January the 27th. That was when he lied to the officials, said I wasn't even in the campaign.
Right.
All of February goes by. All of March goes by. All of April goes by. The investigation is underway. All of June goes by. He's still on the campaign. July goes by. July the 27th. So we were at January 27th. Now we're at July the 27th. He is arrested at Dulles after he's come back from a trip.
Right. And then he begins cooperating with the government.
At some point right around in there.
Correct.
We don't know exactly when. 38 days in the
His
middle.
lawyers negotiate a deal with the government. And their original charges, obstruction of justice, maximum 20 years in jail, is reduced to lying to the FBI. We got to charge it with lying to the FBI because we have to hold something over your head. We have to keep your feet to the fire.
Now, the documents indicate that on January 27th, when he lied, they knew it. So between January 27th, when he lied to them, and July the 27th, when they arrested him, were they following him?
Well, there's one other interview in that time period with his lawyers. And it's unclear if he lied again or if he repeated what he said or if he tried to tell the truth. It didn't change the FBI's mind on a couple things. One, that in fact he lied to them in January. Two, he was a worthy government witness that they wanted to work with. Three, they were going to offer a deal to the lawyers right then and there. Your guy helps us out and obstruction of justice goes away.
When he pleaded guilty on October the 5th,
Right.
Earlier this month, this is Halloween, when he pleaded guilty on October the 5th,
Right.
he was still a cooperating witness, and he's a cooperating witness to this day, and he must remain such.
Correct. The only thing he's probably not doing today is wearing a wire because nobody will talk to him. But he probably was wearing that wire between October 5th, reason for the secret guilty plea, and the revelation of the guilty plea yesterday.
On January 26th, Sally Yates went to the White House and said Flynn is vulnerable. Flynn could be blackmailed. General Flynn Michael Flynn resigned on February the 13th.
Right.
There's been no mention of Michael Flynn, none at all.
Honestly, you know, our colleagues tried to get me to guess who was going to be indicted yesterday, last week when they were playing the guessing game, and I didn't want to do it, but in my mind, I thought it would be General Flynn. It is not. The general, I'm sure, has lawyers who are involved with Bob Mueller's office. I don't know if they're pursuing him or if he's working with them.
And we do not know whether he's been cooperating.
Correct. But I think we'll know soon.
You think that's next?
I do. I think Bob Mueller has sent a message to the whole legal and judicial and political community. He's serious. He's got serious people working for him. They have gathered serious evidence. Wait for the next shoe.
The president says this is all fake news.
This is serious stuff. It's not fake. Manafort and Gates are charged with enough jail time to put them in jail for the rest of their lives. That will cause their lawyers to start negotiating with Bob Mueller.
And if they don't?
Well, then you're going to see serious prosecutions and criminal trials, and who knows what's going to come out of it.
Judge Napolitano, thank you.
You're welcome, Shep.
The news continues. Appears to be a pretty serious incident developing on the west side of New York City around 14th Street, right off the river, the West Side Highway. If you're familiar with this, go ahead. Repeat, please. We're getting new information about it now. I wanted to just let you know what we understand it to be. We understand that there has been a shooting downtown in Manhattan. It appears there's a vehicle involved. It appears there may be a couple of victims. Shots were fired, according to the New York Police Department. Witnesses, firsthand witnesses, have seen a number of ambulances en route to this area. Much of the west side of Manhattan, the downtown area, north and south of 14th Street on the west side, have been shut down. There is a massive parade through Greenwich Village. More than 1 million people normally attend on Halloween night. That's expected tonight. So the barricades are up all over Greenwich Village. So there is basically, on the west side to the central part of Manhattan, no movement downtown at this moment. We're waiting for official word from the police department. NYPD tells Fox News that they are on scene at Chambers and West Street now, and assessing the situation. It is a traffic nightmare. We hope that there are no serious victims. Details as we get them. Russia's top diplomat says he sees nothing wrong with President Trump's former campaign advisor reaching out to the Russian contacts, and a professor who offered him dirt on Hillary Clinton. That former advisor, of course, is George Papadopoulos, about whom we've been speaking, who admitted that he lied to the feds about his contacts with the Russians and admitted that he lied when he said he was not on the campaign at the time of those contacts. But Russia's foreign minister, again, Russia's foreign minister says there was nothing illegal about those contacts. He also called the accusations of Russian election meddling, quote, fantasies. That from the Russians. The top Democrat in the Senate, the Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, is calling for Republican lawmakers to defend the special counsel Robert Mueller during the Russia investigation.
He must be allowed to finish the work he started without any interference. A Republican leader in the House and Senate have an obligation to tell Donald Trump to lay off the Mueller investigation.
The Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina co-sponsored a bill, a bipartisan one for that matter, to make it tougher for President Trump to fire Robert Mueller. But Senator Graham told reporters he does not feel an urgent need to pass that law.
I have zero concern that Mr. Mueller is in jeopardy of losing his job. I've heard nothing from the White House to suggest that the president's going to try to replace Mr. Mueller. Zero evidence from anybody I've talked to. It would be wrong to do so unless there were cause.
On these matters, he's absolutely right. There is nothing from the White House to indicate that he would do such a thing. Senator Graham said there would be, quote, holy hell to pay, unquote, if President Trump fired Mueller without having a good reason. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel is up on Capitol Hill. What more are we hearing from Democrats on this? It is clear that they believe that the president is starting to feel backed into a corner, trapped, surrounded, drawn, and that they fear he could make the move of firing Robert Mueller. But there are no indications thereof, right?
That's absolutely right, Shep. Democrats sound impressed that Robert Mueller's probe is producing results, making progress. The panel's top Democrat of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Mark Warner of Virginia, says his takeaway is this is the latest evidence that the Russians were feeding information, dirt on Hillary Clinton during the 2016 campaign. Another Democrat says he doesn't think special counsel Mueller needs more protection.
We shouldn't have to pass something for a special counsel to be able to do their job without interference from the White House. And if we continue to see the sort of interference and attempts to discredit the special counsel, then it would be fully appropriate for us to do that. We certainly shouldn't have to do that. There should be an inherent level of respect for the rule of law in the White House.
So what we're hearing from a number of Democrats here on Capitol Hill is they want to give Robert Mueller the space he needs to fully do his job. Shep.
What's the latest from Republicans, Mike?
Well, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell weighed in a short time ago.
The special counsel has his job to do. The job we have here in the Senate is the investigation being carried out by the Intelligence Committee.
And the chairman of that Senate Intelligence panel says he is not shocked by the latest developments.
I don't think the indictments were a surprise to any of us who have been involved in the investigation for 9 months. Does it make our job tougher? Only in the fact that there may be some information that we could get from Manafort or Gates that we're not going to be able to get now because of the indictment. But we had assumed for quite a while that at some point they would be taken off the deck for us.
So now relevant lawmakers are adjusting, assuming that Manafort and Gates will not be available to testify before their probe here on Capitol Hill. Shep.
Mike Emanuel on Capitol Hill. Mike, thanks. And now back to the nation's largest city, where police in New York have now confirmed, given us an update on reports of the shooting in Lower Manhattan. Police say one person is in custody. They expect many personnel, emergency personnel in the area. We have from eyewitnesses, and lots of them, that multiple people have been shot, that much of the lower west side of Manhattan, if you were to look at the island, when you get below Midtown, so you go below Central Park and halfway down to the bottom of the island, everything in the far left corner is basically in gridlock now. Halloween is one of the busier days of the entire year in Lower Manhattan. As I mentioned, more than 1 million people for the Halloween parade every year. Barricades are put up along the very small streets in Lower Manhattan. The sidewalks are already small, and the influx of people causes a gridlock that's really hard to describe. You'd have to see it. Now we have multiple reports of people injured, and there are reports that it is much more serious than this. Here's what we got in the early going. Police haven't confirmed this, but here's what we're hearing from witnesses and otherwise on scene. Somebody is driving down this area, Chambers, West Street, the West Side Highway. Somebody starts shooting out of a vehicle. That's the early report. Remember, sometimes witness early reports are wrong, but I want to let you know what you can see it on Facebook and the rest if you want to. But we know that multiple people have been shot. We know that it looked like to witnesses somebody was shooting out the window. Then there was a bit of a car crash at some point. And that's when chaos ensued, and much of the place became just complete and total gridlock. Now at 3:30 in the afternoon, there are reports of fatalities, but police have not confirmed those. We'll let you know more as we know it. Facebook reports almost 1/2 of the entire population of the United States was at least potentially exposed to a Russian propaganda group attempting to influence the 2016 election. Now lawmakers on Capitol Hill are demanding answers. We'll have coverage of that as our bottom of the hour top story right after this. New York City now, one person in custody, a massive investigation underway, and as a result of a shooting in Lower Manhattan, somewhere around the West Side Highway or West Street and Chambers. We have a map for you if you could access it in the control room. It's in BAT 1. If you pull up BAT, and here's that location. This is West Side Highway and Chambers. You can see it's right on the river, right on the Hudson River, and in a very active area. If you go just east of here, so the right-hand side of your screen from here, you're going to get into the West Village and then the Village, and that's where all of this Halloween traffic is. Brand new video just in the last couple of seconds. This is from that region. We now know that multiple people are confirmed shot, one person confirmed in custody. There are reports of fatalities. Police have not confirmed that. Therefore, we would hesitate on this, though I know you're seeing it on your social feeds. Hang on for that. Coverage threat. That is the headline from police. There is no active threat. That said, one person is in custody. New information that we now have. There are multiple victims. The victims have been taken to largely, where they're now towing feet, all along the West Side Highway, from at least Midtown all the way down into Lower Manhattan and down to the tip of the island. There's the highway. Separate from that, divided, is a bike path. People run on it. There are bike lanes that go in both directions. If you're going north, the river is to your left. The highway is to your right. There are places where you can drive, for instance, into the piers, Chelsea Piers and the rest. There's also a heliport there into which you can drive, and you cross over this bike path. It is possible, I know this, it is possible that you could mistake this bike path for a driving lane. It's really wide. It's as wide as a lane of traffic in a normal city, if you would. So could you be coming from something on the riverside, trying to get to the West Side Highway, and accidentally take a turn on the bike path? You could. That's feasible. It does not sound in the early going like that's what's happened. Police were initially responding to reports of shots fired. They were responding to shots fired and found from that video that you just saw along the West Side Highway, along the bike path there, multiple victims. There are hundreds of witness reports on a chilly but perfectly sunny afternoon, chilly by Manhattan standards, very cold by Southern standards, but it's a chilly afternoon and windy, and the wind comes off that river, so it's cold there. And there are multiple reports of lots of people along the way hit by a vehicle that was driving in the bike path. I know what you're all thinking. We all think the same thing under these times. There is zero indication of terror, nothing of any kind of that matter. I don't even want to bring up the word because it sounds like what we're seeing is initial reports of shots fired. Police arrive, witnesses begin to report. There are multiple people down. Then we get word that the truck was not on the West Side Highway, which is here. It's on the bike path, which is here. Both of them are concrete areas, both of them used by hundreds of thousands of people a day. The key is there is no active threat. From this, we can surmise that whoever was driving that vehicle is in custody. We know only one person is in custody. We know of no other people who were involved in any way. We know of no passengers or accomplices. And we believe this is accurate because the mayor's office and the NYPD are saying there is no active threat. So one perpetrator, one person in custody. We don't know whether this person actually fired shots. We know that there were multiple reports of shots being fired. But now we know, we have just gotten confirmed, police shot the suspect. So could the suspect have been driving in what is a bike path, possibly by mistake, possibly otherwise? Police then engaged and shot the suspect after the suspect ran over a number of people. We believe that's where we are, and here's the reason. We know the perpetrator was in a vehicle. We know the perpetrator is now in custody. We know that multiple people were run over by the vehicle, which was on a bike path and not on a street. And we know that the police shot the suspect because authorities have just informed us that police shot the suspect. And the office, Bill de Blasio, the mayor, his office has just sent out, quote, "There is no active threat." So what do we have? As I mentioned, and I want to emphasize because it's important to talk about this in the early going, if you're at the West Side Heliport at 30th Street and you want to go onto the West Side Highway to go north or south into other parts of Manhattan and you aren't paying a lot of attention, you can end up on that bike path if there are not bikers around everywhere. And there are multiple places like that along the way. Witnesses say they heard a loud bang that sounded like something was crashing, and immediately they heard sirens about 1 minute after hearing shots. That's according to witness on scenes. John Zanitas, our information specialist behind me, reports from WABC7, our network news service affiliate, quoting here, "I was coming out of work and I'm walking down West Street. I hear something behind me, a white pickup truck. It ran over 2 people riding bikes. I went up to their bodies. They were dead. The truck kept going. It hit some cars. I then heard gunshots." This matches all that we've heard now that suggests that a person in a vehicle ran over multiple people. According to this witness, ran over 2 people on bicycles. This is a very active biking area. There's a program in New York City called City Bike, and everything from Midtown, actually up to the uptown areas of Manhattan, all the way into Lower Manhattan, they have these blue bicycles, and there are now bicycle lanes everywhere in Manhattan. They are specifically for bicycles. They have their own cross signals. They're very heavily regulated. The movement of cars has been restricted and otherwise changed to allow for these bike lanes. You have to watch for these bike lanes even as a pedestrian. Bikers rule the city. They have the right-of-way over just about everywhere, and you have to stay out of their lanes. This truck did not stay out of their lanes. Again, quoting from the witness, to ABC7 Eyewitness News, "I was coming out of work and I'm walking down West Street." That's the West Side Highway. It's known as West Street down there, right by the bike path. "I hear somebody behind me, a white pickup truck. It ran over 2 people riding bikes. I went up to their bodies. They were dead. The truck kept going, hit some cars, and I heard gunshots." This is from an eyewitness to the New York Daily News. Frank Brito is his name. He's 45 years old. He told the Daily News he saw 2 trucks crash into each other, and then a heavy-set man get out of one blue tracksuit and chase somebody and fired 5 or 6 times. Let's kill this commercial break in the booth if we can. Reports of an active shooter came in about 3 o'clock Eastern time, so this was 43 minutes ago. Quoting here, "Oh my God, I just heard gunshots and ran with my dog," said the pop singer Josh Groban. Many of you may have heard of Josh Groban. He tweeted, "downtown," and then an expletive. So he's a witness to this. "I work on Chambers Street," tweeted someone else. "Shots came from Chambers and West Street." Somebody who was an eyewitness said the shots were fired from within a vehicle. A new picture coming in here. This is from the Lower West Side. Per PD sources, a fight between 2 truck drivers led to one truck hitting multiple pedestrians, and one truck driver opened fire. So now, a new version. We know that multiple people were hit. We know pedestrians were hit. We know bikers were hit. We know a white truck was involved. Now, the New York Police Department has just alerted that this didn't begin with some sort of accident, a drive onto the bike path, but they believe it began with the drivers of 2 trucks fighting with each other. Who knows how this happens, but on a crazy busy day in Manhattan, with all that's going on with the Halloween parade and all of the streets shut out, all of the rerouting, by 6 o'clock tonight you can drive nowhere in the central part of the island, downtown. It's all barricaded and 1 million+ pedestrians. So everything is chaos down there. There's a fight between 2 drivers of trucks in a way that New Yorkers do, which escalated beyond what anyone ever should. The fight escalated. One truck hit multiple pedestrians during this fight, and one truck driver opened fire. Now, we have the multiple reports that a suspect was shot by police. We shall see what they say coming up. But here's a thing that has not changed. There is no active threat in New York City. If you're concerned, be concerned about traffic. Be concerned about getting around. Be concerned if you have somebody who is involved in all of this, certainly. But as far as being concerned that there is an active shooter or someone who actively wants to do harm, the New York City mayor's and police office says, do not be concerned. There is no active threat. Whatever this was, it's over. Now to figure out who's been injured, for whom it has been much worse, what the circumstances were surrounding the beginning of this, and who will be charged, if anyone, with anything. This began, of course, with reports from police to all of us in the media, from police of shots being fired in Lower Manhattan. It originally began with somewhere around 14th Street, which is a little bit north of where we're talking about now. Chambers Street is in the general area of Stuyvesant High School, not too far away from what you would know as the World Trade Center or the 9/11 Memorial, that sort of thing. This area where this is, by way of happenstance, just by way of explanation, was inside the zone after the attacks of 9/11. This area has largely been repurposed and rebuilt since the attacks of 9/11. Is a very expensive and gorgeous place to live. The High Line is not far from here. As I mentioned, there are bike paths and all the rest. We have new information coming to our senior correspondent, Rick Leventhal, who's live with us and in New York City. Rick?
Shepard, I've spoken to multiple law enforcement sources. This information is preliminary. We can't confirm the numbers, but I'm being told by multiple law enforcement sources that there are, in fact, multiple fatalities from this incident. One source tells me that the suspect entered the bike lane at Houston Street along the West Side Highway there, entered the bike lane at Houston Street and drove his pickup truck down that bike lane, striking pedestrians and people on bikes all the way to Chambers Street, where there are reports that he got out of the vehicle and began firing a weapon. There are, again, reports of fatalities. I'm told there may be fatalities from this truck hitting people on bicycles. There may be fatalities from the shooting. There's still officers on the scene trying to sort this out. But again, officers telling me that the suspect is in custody and that the bomb squad is now checking out the vehicle to make sure that it's not booby-trapped in some way with explosives. So they have located the suspect, located his vehicle, and are now tending to the injured and apparently perhaps wounded along that path of carnage as it's being described.
Yeah, it is being described by the New York Post, which is owned by the parent company, or with which this company shares common ownership, as a bloodbath in Lower Manhattan. I will caution, because I feel like caution is the right thing to do, that we all working in this building remember that immediately around the corner from here, and it wasn't that long ago, there was a vehicle which took a turn into a pedestrian area of Midtown and literally appeared to be a terrorist mowing down tourists and a few locals. As it turned out, that person was a drunk driver going the wrong way on a one-way street, and as awful as that was, it was not an attack on this city or on anything else. This person, we believe Rick's information is accurate. Again, developing stories change. They change from police, they change from witnesses, largely, especially when the area is so big. If Rick's report, these are live pictures now, if Rick's reporting is correct, and we have no reason to doubt it, you make this turn there and drive. I've been trying to describe this pathway for you. It's more like a small alley-sized bike path. It's as wide as a small street with lanes for bikes in both directions and room for runners on either side. It's a wide thing. It's protected with immediate, you can see it. There's the median there that I'm talking about. That, where all those cops are saying, that's a bike path. It's not a street, it's a bike path. So somebody turned onto that bike path in a truck. From Rick's reporting, this person hit pedestrian after pedestrian, hit bikers, according to witnesses on scene. This report of the truck, the argument with the truck, that could well have happened as someone else was trying. We just don't know every single detail, but we do know that lots of people are injured, and our belief is that multiple people, in the early going, at least witnesses believed that multiple people were dead. I'm quoting witnesses for you, said I walked up to them and they were not breathing and they were not alive. So what has happened exactly in New York City? We don't know. We don't know if a horrible accident has happened. We don't know if somebody who's under the influence of something has made a wrong turn. We don't know if someone who's being very careless. We don't know the circumstances, and we don't know if it's something more coordinated. Here's what we do know. Beyond and the exclusion of every doubt, there is no active danger in New York City. The mayor's office and the police department, the head of the police department, the police chief both say, police commissioner, there is no active threat. There is no active problem. Whatever has happened, and now the investigation begins, the treating of the wounded, the assessment of the situation. It's breaking news coverage from America's largest city, and it continues right after this.